Have you ever encountered something paranormal? Share your scary stories. Come on guys, don't be shy. A few years ago, one night at around 3 a.m. my wife and I was sleeping and I feel myself slowly waking up from a really deep sleep. My eyes started lifting up and as soon as they focused on the lamp on my dresser it slid off and shattered on the floor. My wife and I quickly sat up and looked at each other horrified at the startling noise. We agreed we would clean it in the morning and went back to sleep. The next morning when we woke up the lamp was at the foot of the bed about 5 feet from where it fell, completely intact and not broken at all. We are still trying to make sense of it. Clumsy ghost clearly felt bad for breaking it. Caspar, are you just saying you love things that are around the room? From 3 until 13, I lived in a nice home out near Yosemite National Park. Nothing super spectacular about it. 4 bedrooms, a den, dining room, the norm. Just down a little dirt road, and if you've ever been around those parts, you'll know miles away from civilization. My whole childhood I was visited by this girl in white. She never spoke. I would just wake up at night and see or feel her there. I asked my dad and his response every time was the men in our family can see ghosts. My rationale of this, I'm a skeptic. I remain that to this day. But the story I'm telling made me question was that we had some sort of mild schizophrenia running through our family. It didn't bother me. She didn't look like other people. There was something off about her. After my father died, my mother decided to sell the house and went through a realtor. We never once had contact with the buyers, only knew them by name. The buyers had a son who went to the same school as our old neighbors, dear friends of the family, and the son apparently came to school without sleep repeatedly, complaining that there was a girl who watched him at night and that he needed to get out. Shivers up my spine every time I remember this. Whoa, that is pretty spooky, but it was probably nothing. You should go visit your old house sometime though. I hear late October is beautiful there. Bring your friends, make a party out of it, play some fun party games. There are some great old ones in the basement. Hold on, wait. I get the feeling that you're a ghost. Stop me if I'm wrong here. Pfft, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. But seriously? Basement. Next Friday. Do it. I am the eldest of 3 siblings and of course, as we moved house to house, I got the basement bedroom most times. I was fine with this being the eldest. This let me have privacy. The last home I lived in with my family before I moved out on my own, I spent 5 years in the basement bedroom. Through those 5 years, I experienced amazing night terrors and sleep paralysis on a very regular basis. There were a few incidents where I would wake up and the closet on the far side of the room would be open just a crack, and I'd stare at it knowing I had closed it. And it would creak open just a touch more, then after what would seem like hours slowly close and click shut, not a slam. Not a regular door close, a very slow methodical one if that makes sense. On 2 specific nights I woke up, not suddenly like something jarred me, but just kind of rolled over and at the foot of my bed saw a girl standing there. She looked very young, black hair, dark dress, and she did not move, didn't make a sound, and I never could make out a face. Both times I reverted immediately back to being 5 years old and hid my face under the sheets while my heart rate went full marathon pace. Eventually, I would feel like it wasn't there anymore and I'd peek out and it would be gone. My parents are not believers in anything paranormal, and I never told them anything, thinking they would think I'm crazy. I chalked it up to night terrors and extraordinarily realistic dreams during paralysis. I moved out and far away. My next sibling in line got the coveted adult room in the basement and life went on. I had a few Christmas visits and other holiday runs, and at one point I remember going into that room to get a chair and seeing the closet door nailed shut from the outside. I didn't question it as I thought there's no way it's related to my experience. Not long after that, on another return visit home, I went and checked the door to that closet. The nails were gone, but in place was a padlock, and there was clearly bundles of sage sweetgrass hanging above the closet and above the only exterior window in. I worked up the nerve to ask my mum what's the deal with the basement, and she reluctantly told me that my brother had seen things come in and out of the closet, and that he had a girl appear beside his bed and terrorize him on several occasions. Now, no joke, I still haven't told them what I saw because I don't want them to have to move or be bothered with their basement over this. They are both retired, all kids have moved out, and they seem happy. They have also since gutted and renovated the whole basement. I've stayed there a few times now with my wife and nothing has happened. TLDR, basement bedroom growing up is either haunted or has some environmental thing going on in it because night terrors in more than just me. Have you at least told your brother? Please tell your brother. The only one I have is when I was in 4th grade. When I was little, I would always sleep with my door open. I went through a phase where I would wake up between 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock a.m. every night, and every single night I would hear footsteps walking up my stairs, around my living room, through my dining room, across my kitchen and down my hallway. They would always stop right before my doorway, then turn around and go back into the basement. But one night they didn't stop. What I saw was a shadow of a little girl boy, couldn't tell, walk right in front of my doorway, look at me for a few seconds. Then it walked away, back down the stairs. I slept with the door closed the next night. When I was a child, we lived on a house that we could hear footsteps on the stairway every single night. At the same home, my mother saw my sister during the day, having a long conversation with someone. Invisible. At some point, my sister fell in the floor and said, "Stop pushing me." My sister was about 2.5 years old. My mother was so terrified that we had to move days later. Now I can't sleep. You brought this on yourself, OP. Not sure if this is considered paranormal, but when I get fevers as a child, I would always, in my fugue and pain-infused state, hear a man counting in a very deep voice. He would count from 1 and up. As the numbers get larger, the voice gets louder and more intense. It started to get less frequent as I grew older, and now I do not experience it anymore. I've brushed it aside as a recurring nightmare until only recently I've learned that my sister would experience the exact same thing when she was younger as well. It's not the scariest thing, but it does send shivers down my spine trying to comprehend this. Imagine if one day the voice started counting down from 10. Pants would be shat until it got to -1, -2. Then I'd be like, oh, come on. Demon voice, this week we will be learning about imaginary numbers. Calculators will not be permitted. Learning to count with Satan. Learn to count in 666 easy steps. Demons want to be him. This sounds like standard childhood fever delirium. I used to get similar hallucinations to do with rising intensity and volume too. I used to see machinery in factories in my fever that would get louder and more intense until my brain couldn't cope with the size and volume. I also used to get perception errors where things really close would seem far away and vice versa. It was very unpleasant. The fact that it's common doesn't diminish its otherworldly horror, but it wore off as I got older. It's hereditary, too. My father used to get it when he was a kid, but much worse, so that it would eventually trigger a seizure. This is really interesting. I used to have dreams of 2 stones rubbing together until the sound became unbearable and I would wake up, and it would only happen when I was sick. I wonder if it is the same thing. Sounds very like it. Strange that it manifests itself in similar ways in different people. According to one Cornell study, 20 of their pediatric patients got it when experiencing high fever. I was lucky that my parents are both medical personnel who understood what was happening to me. I can't imagine how scary it must be for parents who don't know about it suddenly to see their kid go mad and be distressed by things nobody else can see. In 2001, my husband and 3 sons all came down with some sort of virus. My kids were 7, 5, 3 months. They all had high fevers, lots of pooping and upchucking. Were achy, felt like crap. The DOCs never said what it was. Thank goodness I did not get it. I was needed. My husband ended up with cardiomyopathy and heart failure. Anyway, my then 5-year-old son started having fever dreams, hallucinations. At one point, he sat up in bed, holding out cupped hands to me, and said, "Look, Mama, look at the pretty red beads I found." Then he started to cry, saying that they were dropping from his hands. He frantically picked at the sheets, grabbing at invisible beads, and crying as if his heart was broken. He fell asleep in my arms, sobbing. This was awful emotionally for me, and it gave me insight as to how real hallucinations are to the people having them. Yeah, I used to freak out my mum by sleepwalking because it was always like a normal interaction, then I'd start acting weird. She was telling me about how I came downstairs, said hi, and she asked me what I was doing. I told her looking for my frisbee. I didn't own a frisbee. She handed me the lid to an old ice cream pail and I went back to bed. I woke up in the morning and asked my mum where the lid came from and was very adamant that I had been sleeping all night. I used to dream that I was in a really big grey room. And you know when sound is so silent that the silence becomes loud? Yeah, I had that. It became louder and louder until I woke up totally drenched in sweat. I used to get these dreams every year or two. They were fucking horrible. Edit, a reply here reminded me that sometimes a grey ball would make an appearance. The comment describes it better, but holy hell, it's really strange that so many of you have experienced the same thing. I've heard things like this a lot about fevers. When I would get a fever when I laid in bed, everything would start to get bigger and closer to me, and everything seemed harder and everything seemed louder. I would imagine huge boulders bouncing off the walls of my room sometimes during this time too. Has also become less frequent, to the point where that doesn't happen anymore. Maybe your dad just really got off to counting each thrust in bed? Read that in James Hetfield's voice. 1, 2. Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4. Your gut's on the floor. I used to have something similar-ish when I was sick. It'd be lying in bed or on the couch or something, and if there was a repetitive noise happening in the background like a clock ticking or something, it would get faster and more intense until I eventually lost my shit. And on top of that, I'd get this weird sensation where, in the best way I can describe it, my hands would feel really big, like swollen or something. I don't know what fuck that's supposed to mean. Tick-tock, 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 fuck, my hands feel weird. Tick-tick, tick-tock-tock. Begin crying like a bitch. This was only when I was younger. It doesn't really happen anymore, although very rarely I'll get the sensation it's about to happen again, in which case I just get up and shake the feeling off. A friend of mine was taking a picture of herself and her daughter kissing, and in the background you can clearly see a figure that was not there. She had ghost experts come in and check around the house and found nothing. After some research, they found one of the previous owners was a mortician or ran a funeral home or something. I have known this girl for years, and it would completely shock me if this was fabricated, as I saw how upset she was and how much money she dished out for experts. They no longer live there. Edit. Last time I posted this, people had some questions, so let me try and answer some before you even ask. Keep in mind this was over 10 years ago, so I may misremember some things. She was not the one taking the picture. There was a third person in the room behind the camera. The figure looks centered in the picture because it was cropped and sent to me through email. Nothing this extreme happened again in the house while they were occupying it. I see the white orbs that you can see on her face and in the background are also something supernatural. I love shit like this. I mean, is it true? Is it fake? There's obviously a kid in the background with a warpy face. Is the kid looking at the camera? Or as in this thread? Is the kid looking at the camera or as in this thread? As soon as I looked at that photo, I had to close it. Holy shit. I closed it as soon as possible in case it was a GIF. I was ready to say, nah, that's just another girl. But what's really freaking me the fuck out is the hair. It's like it's charged with static electricity or something. Honestly, that doesn't seem like something to look into. The house is safe, ghost-free, and in an excellent school district. They should come home. I'm sure they're missed. Also, can I get a higher quality version of that photo? For reasons. Woke up one night to a loud screeching noise, similar to the screech the Nazgul make in Loader. The entire room was flashing rapidly in bright colors. My computer turned on for a split second, enough to get the fans rattling, and my computer screen had static on it. The entire ordeal was over in less than a second. I still don't know if it really happened or if my brain was just playing me tricks. People at Skrillex concerts pay for that shit. I woke up in the middle of the night to hear this noise first 40 seconds, and I was scared shitless until I figured out what was going on. I had the Meshuggah Alive DVD in the computer in my bedroom, and it had somehow started to autoplay, filling the room with menacing ambience. One time my speakers were on, but the computer was off, and they were playing music. This scared 12-year-old me out of my mind, and I sat for half an hour trying to figure out what the hell sound was coming out of them. It was faint, but just loud enough to hear. Turned out that for whatever reason, they were picking up an FM signal and playing a local radio station. I still don't know why. I posted this story before in another thread like this. My story may not be scary, but it is paranormal. My grandfather died when my mother was pregnant with my younger brother. My brother has my granddad's name, and we always jokingly said he had grandpa's soul. One day, I was about 14, and my brother was 7. My family went on a walk in the forest. We were walking for a while when there was a small path to the left of us that led to a small field. My brother held my mum's arm and said, Mum, I want to go there. That's where I have fun. That's where the wonderful music plays. My mother had tears in her eyes as she explained to us that in her youth, my grandpa used to play saxophone in a Bavarian music group, and every summer they played at a small festival on that field. That's a really lovely story. So I've never posted this because I always get to these threads way too late. So I get home from my job as a server at midnight. One of my roommates was in the Navy and was deployed at the time, and the other one was at his girlfriend's house. I cook myself dinner, and as I'm cooking, my dog starts growling and barking towards the middle of the room at nothing. This is especially weird because she never ever barks. She was a rescue, and I bought her as a sense of security. When I'm home alone, I'm a female, and I could never get her to bark at anyone. I dismiss her barking as odd, but I finish cooking and eat. I start to clean and turn the sink on because it takes forever to get hot. But right when I turned around, the sink turned off on its own. Again, I think it's odd, but I don't really think it's worth freaking out over. The hair on the back of my dog is standing up straight, but no one is home, and it's midnight, so I figure I'd just tough it out, even though I was beginning to get a little spooked. After cleaning, I go in the bathroom and sit on the sink to pluck my eyebrows. My bathroom was small, with the sink immediately to your right as you enter, with the toilet next to it, bathtub at the end, and toilet paper dispenser directly across the toilet. It was a really narrow room, so you could reach the TP while sitting on the toilet. So the way I was sitting, the toilet paper dispenser was behind me. After 2-3 minutes, I hear a weird noise behind me, so I turn around and I shit you not, the whole roll of toilet paper was unraveling fast as fuck, like someone was pulling it. I noped the fuck out of that bathroom. The door was closed and it had no windows, so it couldn't have been a breeze. I put a leash on my dog and ran out of that apartment faster than Usain Bolt. By the time this happened, it was already around a.m. None of my friends were awake, so I spent the night sitting outside of the door to my apartment. When I went back in the next morning, the whole roll of toilet paper was on the ground, and the roll was probably 30 for full. I'm talking about a good 5-10 meters of toilet paper. After that day, I never had an odd experience quite like that one ever again, but one of my roommates did mention that a few times he'd come home and find every door and cabinet in the place open, when he'd specifically remembered closing them and leaving them that way when he left. This was when I was on vacation out of state and our other roommate was still deployed. I wrote this all on mobile, so excuse any spelling errors. Should have put child locks on the cabinets and threw the TP in there just to piss it off. Ghosts hate it when you wipe with your bare hands. I've posted this before, but what the? Hey, okay, this may take a bit of doing, so bear with me. Army base, Soest, West Germany as was. A still, dark autumn evening. Must have been warm because it was the kind of temperature you don't notice. Me 13 and a mate 15 just dossing around before I had to go in. Behind the flats where we live was a green area with a play area. Only one street light, so it was very dark compared to our street and the well-lit main route through the camp, which was about 80100 meters away from where walking. No traffic, nothing. It was never busy, and this was on a weekend evening, so literally no traffic and no one out and about, as far as we could tell, which suited to teenagers just fine. Thanks. Bear with me, this is important. So, we're heading between our respective blocks of flats and into the darkened park area, and we stopped dead. On the main road, moving right to left, was a figure, vaguely person-shaped, but undulating and waving like cloth underwater. It glided along the middle of the road. Based on what it obscured behind it as it moved, I'd estimate it to be between 8-10 foot, but at the very least, it was larger than average man size. This shape, this thing, was not walking. There was none of the slide up and down motion of walking. It just glided, smoothly at a fast walking pace, I'd guess. And it was black. Not someone wearing black clothes black. It was a hole cut into the night. No reflections. No shadows or shades. Just blackness. It seemed like a lifetime as I soaked this detail up. In reality, it couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 seconds. I whispered, breathed, "Do you see that?" My friend, in a whisper, replied. And the fucking thing changed direction. The last image I have, before we broke and ran, was of it rising up as it came over the curb. This is what makes it real for me. This is something that had mass, that obeyed at least something of the physical world. It moved from the brightly lit road into the same darkness in which we stood. We broke and ran for our lives. back onto our street and into my mate's block. The fucker then bolted back to his own home, leaving me wondering how the hell I was going to get to my block. After a while, the fear of the repercussions from my dad for being late in overrode my fear of what might be out there in the night, so I ran, eyes straight ahead, the 10 or so meters to my own front door. I was in too much trouble for being late to ever say anything when I got home. Sometimes when I'm walking and the night is warm and still and quiet, I think about it and I wonder what I'd do if I ever saw it again. Run away, or face it down and maybe solve a 30-year-old mystery. Honestly, I just don't know. Maybe it was a Muslim woman in a hijab burqa lost on her way home at night. Oh, thank Allah. Some kids. I can ask them how to get home from here. Hey, wait, where are you going? Come back. We moved into a house and everything was really quiet the first 6 months or so. The neighbors told us that the people who lived there before had moved after their teenage son died in a motorcycle accident. Then after that first 6 months, my dad died, not in the house. After that, stuff started to happen. I would have friends sleep over and one night my friend woke me up because she said there was a young guy standing in my bathroom. So I went and checked and nothing was there. Over the next few years, just about any friends that stayed overnight had said they saw the tall blonde young guy walking around the house. We did have a few other things happen, like a wine glass was on the counter and it broke. No one was touching it. It just shattered on the counter. Another time during the winter, we had the heater on and my room was always the warmest in the house. And it was ice cold as you walked across my bedroom to the bathroom that was connected. The creepiest thing was when my boyfriend was sleeping on the couch in the middle of the night and he said he woke up to a young guy pushing him off onto the floor. He said the guy didn't say anything, but my boyfriend at the time knew that he had to leave and he did. He wouldn't stay at my place after that. Edit, I have gotten a lot of crap about the wine glass, so I will explain in better detail. My mum had a huge collection of glassware. She had so many, there wasn't anywhere to put it anymore, so we just set them on the counter. The wine glass had been sitting there for a long time. No one had touched it. It hadn't just come out of the dishwasher or anything like that. Basically, she bought it, put it on the counter, and never touched it again. When it broke, no one was near it. Only me and my mum were there, and we were both at least 10 feet away. Could it have been something like a crack in the glass? Maybe, but at the time, it startled us and we thought it was weird. I was just sharing one of the many things that happened. We did have a few other things happen, like a wine glass was on the counter and it broke. No one was touching it. It just shattered on the counter. This happened to me once when I tended the bar. I put the glass down, turned around to get something, and when I turned back to grab the glass, it shattered just as I was about to reach for it. Turned out the glass was just really warm and it shattered when I placed it on a cold surface. Well, I never had a haunted house, but the street I grew up on was cursed. Everyone on the street built their house new there, so it was a new development. It was all big properties, so probably like 10 on the street. Something really bad happened to every house on the street. One suicide, one hit and run death, one cancer and death, one guy fell off a ladder and broke his neck. One kid 18 was declared mentally insane. There were more, but I can't remember the specifics. One bad thing per house. Our house got off light, that is. No one died or became paralyzed. Our dad became abusive to my mum and older siblings and it destroyed our family. My mum and us kids moved away. The next people who moved into our house built a big garage it and then their teenage son hung himself in it about a year later. We found out later on that an Aboriginal elder, this is in Australia, found rock markings warning to stay away from the area as there were bad spirits there. Edit. Well, after writing that, I decided I should check if Aboriginals actually believe in evil spirits. Turns out they do. Just found this, which pretty much describes exactly what went on, and we're in southeastern Australia. The Thujan mentioned in this story is one of hundreds of evil spirits whose evil deeds were recorded in stories and songs. Along the southeast coast of New South Wales, evil spirits were and are known as goonjas. Generally speaking, contemporary Aboriginal people still believe in these spirits. For example, if they go to a particular area, they believe they must be invited to stay there. If they are not welcome, they will feel this, and to remain there under these circumstances will result in being punished. Punishment may mean death or injury, and this may extend to other members of a family. Some areas are forbidden to women because the male spirits that are believed to live there will punish them if they disobey the trespassing laws. This is one of 2 paranormal experiences I've had that I have a hard time wrapping my head around. It's a long read, but worth it. I've suffered from insomnia as far back as I can remember. I was in 2nd grade, and it was really early in the morning. I think around 5 or so. I had a little TV on my nightstand and was definitely watching Loader on VHS. I had the volume up super loud because my ceiling fan always made a ruckus throughout the night. I was super into the movie when all of the sudden all of the sound around me started to slowly fade away. I remember I became confused and reached to turn my TV up thinking it had broken, but then I realized the sound of the fan had faded with it. The only way I can describe it is comparing it to someone turning the volume down on a car radio. I was suddenly overwhelmed by an intense feeling of euphoria. I have never experienced anything like it. I absolutely cannot describe how utterly at peace I felt. I was able to comprehend what was happening, and then it clicked in my head that I was dying. Keep in mind that I'm in 2nd grade, so this is a pretty intense conclusion, but I just knew. I rolled over onto my back ready to, and excited to accept my fate. That was when I saw it. There was a large white figure in my doorway, just hovering, and pulsating a white aura. I quickly panicked and began calling out for my brother. His room was across the hall. The figure glided to the end of my bed and just sat there, watching. I'm not really sure how much time passed, but the figure suddenly vanished. Sound came back and the euphoria disappeared. I jumped out of bed and ran into my brother's room where I practically flew into his bed. He woke up and when he saw how panicked I was, he began to panic as well. I was hysterical and just kept telling him it was a ghost. We did what any other kids would do, and hid under the covers. After a while we got anxious, and I bravely made a peephole on the blanket to check the time on the clock, hoping that it would be daylight soon. 5:30. The clock read 5:30 in the morning. Then the phone rang, and it rang, and rang, and rang. Me and my brother started to panic even more. Then silence. Once again it began to ring, and ring, and ring. We jumped out of bed and took turns running from light switch to light switch until we had a light path to the living room. Our house was 5,000 square foot. This was not an easy task. We got to the living room and watched cartoons until my mum woke up. She was livid, yelling at us for being up so early. I told her I saw a ghost, which only made her more upset. My brother, who was always tormenting my irrational fears, got mad at her and started telling her this wasn't a joke and it wasn't my imagination. I started telling her to check the phone because I saw the ghost around 5:30 and it must have been the ghost calling kid logic. She went to check the phone and went to the other room for a while. Suddenly she wasn't upset anymore. When we asked if it was said ghost, she said it was a telemarketer. She was so nice about it, she let me sleep in her room the next few days. I thought maybe since it was my brother's birthday that day that she just didn't want to argue, but she never let me sleep in her room. I got home from school on the 15th. I saw the ghost in the early hours on the 13th. My mum called me to the family room and told me to sit in her lap and that she needed to tell me something. I obliged. My great-grandma passed away in the hospital at 5:30 a.m., and the phone calls were my grandma calling to notify us. Me and great-grandma were extremely close. To this day I get chills thinking about it. I know that there are a few ways to explain the occurrence, but I know for a fact that it was 100% a paranormal experience. My Em and brother still back me up on it today. This would probably get buried, but here is my story. I live in Mississauga and I have a Hungarian Kuvisk named K2 after the famous peak in Pakistan. I go for daily walks every day with him, once in morning and once in night. Most nights are pretty uneventful except when K2 stops in front of a bench near a thickly wooded area and just stares at it. At first, I try to ignore it thinking K2 just sits there for rest or there are squirrels nearby. However, lately, I've been noticing K2 getting pretty aggressive at the bench like it does when it's about to fight another dog. I try to ignore it, but then one day, K2 starts barking really loudly and drags me to fight whatever it's seeing. Now, this is pretty dangerous, especially during winter as it's brutal in Canada and if I slip in the snow, there's no one to help me. I had to use all my energy to drag him away from that area. And I was kinda spooked and kinda excited. I asked my dad, who believes in paranormal stuff, how to deal with this, and he said, if there is paranormal stuff going around, then it's best that you either change the walking route or go talk to it and tell it that we mean no harm. Naturally, I chose the latter because I like walking in the forest as it's so peaceful, and walking through that bench area was the only way to get to it. Me and K2 went, and when we got to the bench, I said loudly, "Peace be upon you. We mean no harm. If you can walk away whenever my dog is around, I would greatly appreciate it." I shit you not, this thing actually got up and left. I can. You tell you. Because K2's head was moving wherever this thing was moving. I was so scared at that point, but it was worth it in the end, as it made the walking that much peaceful. However, lately, whenever my dog gets fixated at something in the house, I get pretty scared. No, sorry if my English doesn't make any sense, not my language. Ghosts don't follow people home, even people with cute dogs, even when all they wanted to do was pet the dog and maybe scratch behind his ear some. Also, you need more milk. Okay, I've got a good one. I'm not usually one that believes in the paranormal, but this made me question everything. My girlfriend had always told me her house was haunted. I'd always hear creaks and stuff upstairs and the occasional footstep, but I always played it off as normal house noises until one night in August of this year. We were downstairs watching TV like usual, about to go to bed when we both got a very weird feeling almost simultaneously. She gave me a weird look and I didn't think anything of it, so we went to bed. After a few minutes of her on Twitter and me on Reddit, we put our phones down and roll over to go to sleep. Then we both heard the words "good night" in a child's voice. Doesn't seem too strange, right? Well, considering there weren't children in the house, we both looked at each other like, why would you say goodnight like that? Then we realized neither of us had said it and we left her room fairly quickly. We went downstairs to lay on the couch and watch a little TV and come to our senses and figure out where those words could have come from. Then we got both. Got that someone's watching. You feeling. Not like, oh, that dude over there has been staring at me, but something will not take their eyes off me no matter what I do feeling. So we decided it best to leave the house. We went to walk out the front door, but right as we were about to open it, we heard the child's voice again. This time it came from the balcony right above us in the entryway, clear as day. The child said, "Mommy and Daddy." We looked at each other. I may or may not have screamed, and we ran to my car and decided to drive to the one place that was open in our shitty small Oregon town, Walmart. The problem was, as soon as we got in the car, we knew something had come with us, and it was pissed at us for leaving. The second we got into my Honda, there was nothing but the feeling of hate instilled into both of us for no reason whatsoever. Whatever it was filled that car with hate. It's now about AM and I have to be at work in 5 hours, so we decide to go back to her house and try to get some sleep and see what happens. We walk into the front door and nothing but quiet. We walk up the stairs, turn right, and suddenly it sounds like a dog is growling from her upstairs bathroom. It takes me a second though, because I grew up with dogs and all I could think was that it was just mine and they're being weird. 5 seconds later, I realize I'm at her house and no dog has ever set paw in there. Something was fucking growling at me and I had no idea what. At this point, I'm fucking pissed at whatever is happening because I'm tired and need to sleep for work. So I come up with this brilliant plan of talking to shit to whatever causing all these problems. The only thing that sticks out at this point is me yelling, "If you're so pissed, so something about." Right after that, I feel something pull my shirt. I turn around thinking my girlfriend is playing a very unfunny joke on me. But no, she was still downstairs. Something pulled my shirt. After that, I decided it was time to leave for the night. At AM, we get in my car and drive to my MOMS house. That car ride was much less hate-filled and all the bad feelings were gone for a while. I went to work while my girlfriend slept at my MOMS place, and when I got off, we went back to her house to check things. Everything seemed fine except for the one picture of us she had hanging on her wall was knocked to the ground like something out of a fucking horror movie. But she was too exhausted to care about my safety at that point, and I was so tired I was willing to let whatever was there kill just so I could get some rest. Edit, I'm just going to leave the million grammatical errors. I have fat thumbs and did this on my iPhone, so I'm sorry. My favorite part of this was thinking you yelled "if you're so pissed." So something about, and it was not just a typo. Oh geez, this reminds me of a story my parents told me. I've posted it before, but it's short, so I'll do it again. This was around 7 years ago in a home we'd had paranormal troubles with before, including shadow people and noises. 100-year-old homes are like that. Anyway, it was around midnight and my brother and I were fast asleep upstairs. Our parents were downstairs watching some TV show like Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or something, and when the episode ended, they were talking about spirits and stuff. Now, the layout of the living room was like this, the TV facing the chair my father was sitting in, which is facing perpendicular to the couch my mum was sitting in. Since they were talking, my dad was facing my mum and sees the damnedest thing. As my mother is speaking, the end of the couch she is sitting on is slowly lifting itself into the air. She stops talking when she feels it happening, and less than a second later, the couch drops from about a foot in the air. Well, my dad is all into the ghost hunting stuff, so he stands up out of his chair and yells, "Fucker, you will not mess with my family. Leave my family alone, you fucking bastard." He continues the yelling all while walking across the living room into the den, which is the creepiest part of the house. The den just did not ever feel like a safe place. It was always cold. And sometimes I'd hear my piano in there playing random notes by itself. It had been added onto the house most recently, so I think that's why. He went in there and continued the yelling. He flipped the lights on just in time for every door in the room to slam itself shut. There were 3 immediate peace and quiet. We never had another incident. No more shadow people, no more noises, no more creepy feelings. I guess they left or something. That ghost just wanted to play about and have a laugh. They didn't expect him to yell and rant and act freaky like that. Scared as fuck, it legged it right out of there. The second we got into my Honda, there was nothing but the feeling of hate instilled into both of us for no reason whatsoever. Sounds like my last relationship. This is my first ever post on Reddit. It seems so cliche to start by saying I don't believe in ghosts, but that's where I'm coming from. Here goes. A few years ago, I moved into an old 1-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. This was the first time I had moved into my own place, and it was nice to not have crappy stealing roommates. The apartment block, which only had 8 units, was built in the 1930s. It was moldy, and the rent was interestingly cheap. The first few months go by without a HIC up, and I'm enjoying living in this place. I come home from work one day, and I go into my bathroom. Something catches the corner of my vision. The board which covers the manhole on the ceiling that has access to the small attic space is broken in 2 pieces on the ground. I remember standing there for about 2 minutes trying to make sense of it. I examine the 2 broken bits of wood. The wooden board is about 1 inch thick and would have taken Bruce Lee to break it in half. My initial thought is that the landlord may have sent an electrician around without informing me, and they might have been working in the attic space and broken the board, if that makes sense. But the more I think about it, the less likely that scenario seems. Anyway, I take a couple of pictures and email them to the landlord asking if anyone was in the property that day, with an undertone of me being a bit pissed off that she didn't tell me. I receive a reply at around 7:30 a.m. the next morning. Her email reads, "Please call me as soon as you are able to. I was worried thinking shit someone has broken in." I call her and she explains that her last 2 tenants said the exact same thing happened to them amongst other things, and she will send someone around to replace the wooden board. If I wasn't so busy with work, I would have thought more of it. I lay awake at night for the next few weeks thinking what the fuck caused the board to break in half. And my first conclusion is that someone was living up there in the tiny attic space of this apartment, which seemed very unlikely. About a month later, I wake up suddenly around 4 a.m., which is very unusual. I have so many goosebumps, it feels like someone is rubbing their hands on me. Everything is silent for ages, but then I hear this weird sound coming from the roof above my bed. It's this dragging sound, like someone is pulling a sack of potatoes along the floor. I freak the fuck out and I'm frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure. I think, there's no way a possum would make that sound. After about 5 minutes of listening to this intermittent dragging sound, I work up enough courage to turn on the light and walk into the bathroom, where the manhole is armed with the cricket bat I keep next to my bed. The new board covering the manhole is broken in 2 pieces again. I felt sick. I turn on the bathroom light and stare at the black space where the cover on the manhole would be. As tough as I like to think I am, I'm 100 frozen with fear. The dragging sound has stopped, but there's another sound. There's a whispering. I thought my mind was playing tricks on me at first, but the whispering was clear. It was coming from the fucking attic. Please let me stress at this point that I'm not making any of this up. The whispering sounds like children's voices. It's gibberish mostly, but there's one sentence that I can make out. "It's your turn, it's your turn." It keeps repeating. I turn on every single light in the apartment as well as the TV to try and make things feel normal. It's about 5 a.m. and it's still dark outside. Because it's the middle of winter, I'm watching TV to try and unwind. Then fuse blows and everything goes silent. My pet budgie in my kitchen, who never makes a sound at night time, starts squawking like he's being strangled. I've never heard him make these sorts of noises. He's literally screaming. I grab my car keys and run the fuck out of my apartment and go sit in my car. I wait until the sun comes up. People are now walking their dogs and starting their day, and this comforts me enough to go back into my apartment. The front door is open, but I don't think too much of it because I figure I booked it out of there so fast that I didn't close it. Everything seems normal, and I go into the kitchen to check on Dexter, my pet budgie. He's not in his cage. What the fuck? I let him out most days to fly around, but there is 100 no way of his getting out unless someone lets him out. I start to feel sick again. I look around everywhere, but can't see him. All the windows are closed and the wire mesh screen door at the front door was closed when I came up. I open the door to the bathroom. Again, I open the door to the bathroom and I can hear a splashing sound. Poor little Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I take him out, wash him and dry him off. I thought he was going to die because he was breathing in water. I was so confused. The only logical explanation is that someone did this. At about 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of what had happened. "Oh, wow. You heard the whispering too," she said. "I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I only moved out 3 months ago. I heard the whispering again on a few occasions, and twice the manhole cover moved but wasn't broken. The landlord called me last week. She sounded embarrassed and said that the new tenants, a young Japanese couple, had begged to speak with me about some of the shit that has been going on there. Fuck that. It's their problem now. Just realized that I should have ended this with, it's their turn now. Haha. I've told this story before, so I'll just paste it below. My uncle passed away in August of 2010. Right before he died, maybe a week or two. We were joking about this, and I said, I wonder if they ghosts can see us on the toilet? He replied, I don't know. Buddy, the conversation ended, and he passed away a week or two later from heart failure out of the blue. He was like my dad, and it destroyed me as a result. I have a friend that claimed to be a psychic, but I never really thought about it. One night, she calls me at like a m and says, your uncle wants me to tell you something. I don't know how to word this, but here is my best try. I can see you on the toilet, buddy. I literally lost it. I don't know how I wanted to react to it, because at first I thought she was making fun of it. But he had this special way that he pronounced buddy so that it sounded like a drawn-out pronunciation of body. She said it just like him. To add to it, she never knew of the conversation between us. I still don't know what to do with that information. When I was living at university, I was invited to a friend's house on the other side of town. This required me to go through the university to the other side. As I was headed through, I noticed something hovering above the library. It was pitch dark, and I was the only one out. Yes, seriously, it was just that blatant. First, a few things. It looked like a spinning top with glowing white on the side and a few dotted underneath. This thing was huge. It basically covered the roof. It made absolutely no noise. So here I was with a goddamn flying saucer above the library, and what do? I turn on my phone. I spend the entire time staring at the thing so it didn't get away. I had my phone up and was getting it to video from the corner of my eye when I tripped up. I didn't fall down. I just tripped up and looked at the ground for a fraction of a second. And it was gone. It was just gone. It was massive and silent, and it was just gone. I told nobody because it sounded like bullshit. I still don't tell people because it sounds like bullshit. But it happened. I'll never forget it. It happened. I read this back to myself and it still sounds like bullshit. Posted this before, but I'll do it again. I was on Manassas battlefield with my father when I was younger. We were sitting on the back of his tailgate eating McDonald's on top of a hill, looking at some cannons. It was foggy and misty out that day, with a slight chill November, I think. All of the sudden, we see a man dressed in full Civil War attire, waving at us, standing by the cannons about 50100 meters away. My dad had a pair of binoculars with him, and we got a closer look of the man. He appeared to be in a Confederate uniform and was standing stationary, only moving his arm to wave. It was a come here wave. My dad thought there was a reenactment going on and that the man needed help. So my dad walked down to the man while I watched with the binoculars. When my dad got close to the man, he stopped walking and had a confused posture. After a couple seconds, next to the man, he turns around and sprints back to me. He proceeds to throw everything in the back of the truck, and we leave the battlefield in a hurry. My dad said while walking down there, the man slowly disappeared, and my dad said he got the strangest feeling in his stomach and mad chills. To this day, my dad gets the chills and goosebumps telling the story. My dad saw combat in Vietnam, so he is not an easy guy to scare. From my perspective, my dad was right next to the guy and never disappeared. We don't know what we saw, but I think it was a ghost. TL, dear, I think we saw a ghost of a Confederate soldier. I work in a very old school. I've heard far of sounds like voices and normal daily activity in an otherwise empty school. I've also heard doors closing and electronic toys move and make noise when I know I am alone. I shared this story before in a similar thread. One night when I was 10, I was asleep in bed and was woken up by my bedroom door opening, then someone sitting on my bed. I felt the graze on my leg and the bed sink as they sat. Thinking it was my mum having something to tell me, I opened my eyes only to see a pale, eyeless, just black empty sockets boy who seemed to be my age sitting at the foot of my bed with his legs crossed staring at me or facing my direction since he had no eyes. He then reached his hand toward me and he was holding what looked like a little black box. I was freaked out, but as I reached to grab it, he hesitantly pulled back. I reached out further for it and said, "Give it." As I did so, I blinked, and by the time I reopened my eyes, he was gone. The spot of the bed where was sitting lifted back into place, but the imprint of someone sitting there was still present. I told my mum in the morning, and she was slightly freaked but assured me I was just dreaming. Fast forward 5 years. I had my girlfriend over to do homework. After homework, she took a nap while she waited for her parents to pick her up. When they arrived, I tried waking her to let her know. I nudged her, and she opened her eyes so sudden already, looking in the direction of the corner of the room where the wall meets the ceiling, lifting her finger and pointed. And as fast as she woke, she fell asleep again. I attempted to wake her again. She came to full consciousness, and I asked her what the hell that was about and explained what she just did. She said, "Oh, I thought I was dreaming." But up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes just there in a Spider-Man pose staring at me. That's when I freaked out and told her the story for the first time of when I saw what I guessed was the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years, still with the same girlfriend. And by this time, we had a 2-year-old daughter. We were living in my old bedroom at my parents' house. My daughter would wake up at the same time every night and start talking. For a while, we thought it was a normal baby thing until I noticed it was almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her one night who she was talking to every night. She responded, "A little boy, he talks to me. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mummy." I told my mum what happened the next morning, and before I got to tell her what I thought, she said, "I remember when that happened to you. Then your girlfriend, I have no idea what that is by then. Neither my girlfriend or I have seen the little boy after our first encounter, but my daughter continued her nightly conversations until we got our own place later that year. TL, DR, daughter, girlfriend and I encounter same ghost 5 years apart. My old bedroom is probably haunted. Cop here. I've posted this story before, so it may sound familiar. I was dispatched to a house at about AM for a prowler. We get there and talk to the residents. Long story short, they saw 2 people wearing masks, one Jason-style hockey mask, don't remember the other in the yard across the street. It was like 2 weeks past Halloween, so it seemed believable. We check the area and don't see anything. 10-8. It's worth noting the residents didn't seem drunky crazy at all. A few times you'll get a similar call and get there to find the resident is strung out on meth and seeing things. However, back to the story. An hour later, we get called back. This time we have our dispatcher on the phone with them while we are surrounding the area. We about 5 of us are in a perfect position. Dispatch tells us they can still see the prowlers in the next yard. We start to move in. Dispatch says the residents saw the 2 prowlers wave and move into the shed. Guess where I am? That's right, next to the shed. I give verbal commands, bang on the door, and nothing. Fuck it, fine. I'll come in after you. Doors open and empty. I even think to check for a trapdoor. Nothing. It is raised about 4 inches, so there isn't even a possibility of a door leading out. Again check the area and find nothing. I talk to the residents. They said, as I was moving in on the shed, the two put their finger to their lips giving the sign and then they both waved. They moved into the shed as I was next to it. We went over every possibility trying to come up with an explanation. If the caller was just fucking with us, they had no prior history of it, as in repeated calls for service at the address. I'm not much of a believer in paranormal stuff, but I can still appreciate a situation where I cannot logically explain what just happened. DOODDOODDDOO. When I was a dumb kid, my brother and I were playing around on the stairs. I was at the top, jumping around in a pillowcase. I slipped, obviously, and went tumbling down backwards. Everything went into slow motion, as things sometimes do when your life is in peril. As I was flipping over and over, the back of my skull getting closer by the second to smashing into the hard concrete basement floor, I noticed a movement coming from the dark basement. Suddenly, a large bag of dog food fly across the room as if hurled by an invisible hand with absurd precision, and interposed itself between my head and the floor. My skull smashes into the bag a millisecond later, spraying kibble instead of skull fragments around the room. My brother and I were both slack-jawed and confused. The flying bag had traveled at least 10 feet, likely saving me from death or serious injury. I used to think this was evidence for God or angels, or that I have some kind of purpose, but I realize this is evidence for nothing in particular, except that life is bizarre and unexpected things can and do happen. You know what's fucked? My two boys were playing by my basement door. The youngest closed the door, causing the oldest to fly down the stairs in the pitch black concrete at the bottom. I had just thoroughly cleaned the basement with my mum and tossed everything out, except our moving blankets, and there was absolutely nothing at the bottom of the stairs, so I knew it wasn't going to end well. When I got down the stairs, my oldest was laying head at the bottom of the stairs on those moving blankets. My mum and I chalked it up to one of us moving them and not potting them back. My son says he did cartwheels down the stairs but barely hit any of the stairs on the way down. Strangest thing ever. Reading this now. My time to shine. Finally. An Reddit question I can actually answer. So this was several years ago, when I was a total deadbeat and lived with my then girlfriend's parents. They had a TRI-level house, with the basement that contained our living space and my girlfriend and I's bedroom. Upstairs was the living space for everyone else, the dining room and kitchen. The third level had the master bedroom, and 2 additional bedrooms for my girlfriend's sisters. I was home alone one night, with her parents off with friends. My girlfriend at a friend's, and her sisters were at an all-night church thing. I elected to stay home and play WoW all night. Where my computer and desk sat, right above my head, was an AC vent. Often, I could hear her sister playing in her room from that vent. I was leveling my paladin or something when I heard laughing and giggling coming from the vent. Nobody was supposed to be home, so my heart picked up. I glanced at the clock on my computer, and it read 1:36 AM. I remember this all very distinctly. I went to go investigate and headed upstairs. The way the landing sits is at the top of those stairs. You can turn left and either go upstairs or go into the kitchen. I climbed the second set of stairs and opened the first door on the left, which was her young sister's room, which is directly above the basement. Inside, I used the light of my phone to illuminate as best I could. I saw a small figure, what I assumed was a small girl wrapped in a white sheet in the center of the room. Cue pants shitting. This figure, this young girl, stops playing with the dolls and slowly looks at me. It let out the most ear-shattering scream you can imagine. My skin crawls just thinking about it, and my chest tightens just remembering it. I wish I could tell you what transpired, but I remember waking up at the bottom of the landing, right next to the door of the kitchen. I stumbled into the kitchen to get a drink of water and contemplate what the fuck just happened. I glanced at the clock on the microwave. The clock read 4:46 AM. We never found the sheet the next day, but the dolls the figure was playing with were sitting in the middle of the room, away from the toy chest, which they were inside of that afternoon when she cleaned her room, which is across the room. Edit, everyone is saying to turn on the light. That's all well and good, and I would have done that. However, the light in the room operated on a pull cord connected to a fan in the center of the room. Flicking the light switch would have done me no good. Edit 2. Someone said I should have taken photos of the ghost. Yes, I should have, since I had my phone. However, this phone was so old, it didn't have a camera. All it was used for was for calling people. Sorry, I didn't get these edits earlier. I made the post and went to bed, and just got home from work. Edit 3. This one for you, Athwing Gedwheel.